So welcome everybody to the first episode of our podcast with Master Debonair. My name's Joe Wilson and I'm the content executive here at MD. And today I'm joined by Simon Whitaker, Master Debonair CEO.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Simon. And our very first guest is the Managing Director of Northern Insight Magazine and also Master Debonair Ambassador, Michael Grahamslaw.
Great to be here.
Thanks very much for coming.
Great to see you both. Great to see anybody at the current time. So.
It really is. It's a new change being able to see people face to face again, isn't it?
It most definitely is.
So, Michael, welcome to Blokes Being Blokes. This is our very first podcast, and we are basically just wanting to bring people in and just talk general conversations about anything you like, but we do have a few questions for you to start off. So this is the first time that us two have met Michael. So what we're going to do is just go around the table, gents, and we're just going to give a bullet-pointed history of ourselves. So if you want to start, Simon.
Hi, it's Simon Whitaker, CEO of Master Debonair. I'll not go too much into my career because we'll be here for about 6 hours at least. But I'll probably start at the beginning of Master Debonair. I lost my father in November 2015, quite out of the blue, to be honest. Was attending his funeral and getting all ready for that, and I really wanted to. My dad was like a really dapper gentleman. Always used to go into the office with his 3-piece suit on, even on a weekend when there was nobody else around. So I was looking for a tie clip and a pocket square, something a little bit different for his funeral, and I couldn't find anything. And I wanted to look at setting up businesses for a number of years. And I said to my wife after the funeral, I'm going to find some accessories, I'm going to build a website, and we're going to sell them. So I sourced a couple of suppliers, and that was around about the December time. I started building the website in 2015. This is where I was currently in my job as a sales director in a big European organisation. And then it kind of snowballed from there. I wasn't quite happy with tie clips and pocket squares. We found suit suppliers, shirt suppliers, shoe suppliers, went to the bank with a business plan. They agreed very quickly to lend me £25,000. They said it was the most remarkable business plan they've ever seen in their life. But I was used to pulling together sales budget of £15 million in my last job. So. And that's how it really snowballed. We launched the website at the end of February 2016, and I always wanted a shop, so I wasn't quite happy with the website. The website, we started to see sales pretty much straight away, so we were running that from our home, and through really starting off through social media. So Facebook was huge for us. Massive engagement. We were posting the looks that we liked, a little bit of fun, competitions, that kind of thing, and just like the levels of engagement and the followers were huge. Ran the competitions, and then we found our first shop in East Bolton in round about the March time. So not long after we set the business up, and we started to refit that. Both myself and Eve, both co-founders of the business, and husband and wife team. Which has its challenges and its benefits, because we're certainly very different. And she project managed and designed and fitted out our first shop in East Bolton, which we thought was huge, and we didn't think we'd have any stock to fill it. And then we opened in April 2016, and people travelled from everywhere. One of our first customers travelled up in the car from London, and pretty much from there it's just absolutely snowballed.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, which I'm sure at some point we'll go into more detail. But I took some advice many years ago. You either dip your toe in or you dive right in. And I've always been a dive right in kind of person, and here we are now over 4 years later. So that's a very, as my dad used to say, long story short.
Well, thank you, Simon. Brief history of Master Debonair for anyone who isn't familiar with the business. You can find us on all social media platforms at Master Debonair. So if you want to find out a little bit more about the types of clothes and services that we do provide, then please go on the socials and get involved. So Michael, our first guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. Can you just let anybody who isn't familiar with yourself and Northern Insight magazine, a little bit of history about yourself? And
I've delighted to, and firstly very flattered to be your first guest. Well, would you believe I'm just about to commemorate 30 years in the print and magazine industry.
Well done.
And actually today itself is the 5th anniversary of the first edition of Northern Insight being published.
Well, happy birthday to Northern Insight.
Thank you very much, and we're just about finishing issue 60. So,
Fantastic.
A bit like Simon trying to cut a very long story short, I left school at 18. I went to Longbenton High School. I really enjoyed my school life. I decided to take a year out to go to university. Before I went to university, and now I'm on my 30th year out. I went, shows how long ago it was, I went to the job centre. I saw a job advertised for a telephone sales executive at Newcastle Chronicle and Journal. I couldn't drive at the time, and I thought, well, as my mum always used to say, well, if nothing else, son, you can talk. So I went and got interviewed for that job, and found that I just had a natural love of meeting, well, at the time, just talking to people.
Yeah.
I then passed my driving test. I became like a full-time rep for the Evening Chronicle. I then had a long spell as sales manager, then sales director at another local magazine. And then I had about a 15-year period of co-owning and managing various titles around the region. But really from, bear in mind I'm 50 next year, from my early 20s, I'd wanted my own ball game, just completely on my own.
Yeah.
And that's not to diminish at all those that I'd worked with and been with in the past. So the opportunity came May 2015 to really go it alone. And I thought to myself, it's now or never.
Yeah.
I'd lost both of my parents tragically on the same day, February 2014, and I thought if I don't do this now and try and give it a go on my own, it won't happen, because obviously as we all know, time goes by so quickly. So I launched Northern Insight, and the support I had was nothing short of phenomenal. People often ask me how difficult that was getting issue 1 published. My response always to that is not as difficult as getting issue 2 done, because obviously that's a little bit like it feels a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show.
Yeah.
But what's happened is, since then, things have snowballed and evolved, and now we've got a very vibrant 180-page plus product which we're producing monthly. We've got a fantastic social media following, which we've built completely from scratch. And as I said before we started this, to Simon, I'm a print man. That's something I've really had to learn, the power of social media. And things, as I say, have just evolved, and we're introducing new things all of the time. And it's the one thing in my job is it's exciting. No 2 days are the same. It can be frustrating. Sometimes you're tearing your hair out. But ultimately, I feel very blessed that all those years ago, I fell backwards into something that I've made a career out of and first and foremost enjoyed.
Yeah. It's good to hear that such a positive things come from what you would class as like a negative situation.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing to hear. Thank you very much for that, Michael.
No
I really
problem.
appreciate you.
There's a lot more to it than that. But,
yes, of course. Well, that's why we're here.
We'll keep that for part 2,
And also the voice that you hear on the microphone is my name's Joel Wilson. I'm the content executive here at Master Debonair. My backstory is I've always been quite a creative person, and I did an apprenticeship in graphic design, and I worked for a print shop in Newcastle called Print Northeast, and I've done an apprenticeship there for about 5 years. I didn't really know where I was going to go, so I've pretty much done it all. I've worked customer service. I worked in the bank for 5 years as a senior advisor in the bank, but I always knew it had to be something creative. So I kind of worked on my sort of side projects and creative things to kind of build that experience and build that the skill level until I was ready to start thinking about applying for creative jobs, because I didn't have the university experience and things like that most jobs of that nature kind of look for. So I joined Master Debonair as content exec in December of last year. Never looked back. It's been a fantastic experience. It's my first real sort of creative role, although I have had things running in the background to build up that skill level. But gents, thank you very much for being here. The first thing I want to sort of touch on, and it's the subject on everyone's lips really, is coming out of lockdown. So at the time of listening to this, we are just back to work after a long few months of lockdown. It's been a learning curve for everybody. So the first question I want to pose to you guys is, how did you initially adapt, whether personally or professionally, to lockdown? So the question's
I think
out there for.
I'll pick that up first of all, because I can safely say in my whole career from starting an engineering apprenticeship at the age of 16 onwards, working in all different industries, that I've never experienced anything like it. I think that week leading up to obviously the virus becoming bigger and bigger out there, and all of a sudden from our side, and probably like a lot of industries, all of a sudden we saw a massive decline in sales within a short period of time. We're obviously a growing family business. We reinvested pretty much everything that we brought in back into the business, into people, into product, into buildings. So I suppose a lot of businesses, what we're seeing at the minute is cash flow is tight. And to see all of a sudden cash not coming in, that's really the first thing. My ultimate responsibility, and I say this all the time, I worry about myself last. And I keep saying this until everybody believes me, but my number one priority is the people I employ. I brought them in. It's my responsibility to look after them. And straight away, it was really difficult to understand how we were going to do that. I went into survival mode. It was pretty much, I think, on the 23rd of March, we went into lockdown and we had to shut the shops. Yeah. It was like, well, what do we do? Do we close the online business as well? How are we going to support that? Obviously we just launched a brand new season in spring summer, so we'd brought in all this new stock. Like any businesses, we have payment terms. We obviously didn't know how long lockdown was going to last, so your payment terms kick in straight away, and you've got very little sales. So obviously I kept a close eye on the news to find out what the government were doing. I've also got asthma. We've got our daughter who works in the London shop. She was coming back up to the northeast, so I actually self-isolated in the room that we're sitting in now, in our what was our private showroom but is now our meeting room and bar area. So I self-isolated in this room here for 2 weeks.
Nice little Airbnb for yourself.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to be honest,
bar.
Even my wife and business partner, I think she thought I liked it a bit too much. Obviously, I've got the TV in here, I've got my non-alcoholic beers and everything else. But yeah, certainly a worry. I decided to keep the online business going. So again, I kind of remembered how to do that, and fulfilling orders and everything else. Kept the social media side of it going as well, and the engagement. Our customers are highly supportive.
Yes.
And can't thank them enough. And luckily we saw some level of sales, which ultimately helped us pay the likes of the rents, the energy bills, and some other bits and pieces. So it was kind of the right decision. But I pretty much worked for 3 months. I think I had 4 days off during that time, but it was about survival. It was like, what do I need to do? We've got to look at the costs for when we eventually start back up again. Speak to all suppliers. They're our partners as well. I think a lot of them, as much as I think of our staff. And then there's also the personal side, which is everybody's concern. We've also got a mortgage to pay for. We've got 4 dogs who get quite hungry twice a day, and children as well. And it's what do? You just don't know. But you do go into survival mode, and my first career before I moved into this was a process engineer. So I always solved problems, and that's the way I've kind of really gone about running this business. It's solving problems for our customers and solving problems internally. So yeah, it was it's been a challenge, and coming out of it, you know, I think we're in as best shape that we could be coming out of it. And we're planning ahead. You have to, you know.
I agree. I think we've came back sort of refreshed, if anything, and we're seeing better than ever with the ideas, and even sitting here today starting a podcast is another great example of dealing with a bad situation into a positive one.
Do you know, we one of the things that we always used to say weekly in the weekly briefs at Master Debonair was, you know, well, we've said that before, we've had that idea before. We will never, I try and look at the positives. You have to, you've got to be positive, and you've got to be proactive. If you kind of sit around for 3 months and then expect to start up again, then you're going to fail in whatever you do. So we've really put a lot in place that we've talked about. Just to be sat in here in our first podcast after, what, 2-3 weeks back?
Yeah.
You know, we're like, right, get the equipment, let's plan it. Who do we want to get
in?
And let's do it. And what we've got now, and I would suggest virtually everybody in our team who is currently back in the business, it's like a can-do attitude. I'm taking out any barriers. You know, obviously we've got to manage cost. If it's going to cost us something and we can't get any return, but it's like, let's do it. You know, there's nothing that's stopping us. You can do it. And it is going to be tough for the next couple of months, but everybody is in the same boat where, you know, every day there's news of some retailer or some business, unfortunately, who are not going to be here anymore. So you got to be positive.
How did you find first few weeks of lockdown, Michael?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I very much felt in a complete state of shock. That when I look back, I mean, it seems a lifetime ago actually now.
It does really seem a long time ago now.
The best way I can describe it is a state of shock. I mean, when it really broke, I was about 90% of the way through what was going to be our April magazine. As Simon said there, I think the went to full lockdown, I think March the 23rd.
March,
I think I was at the Newcastle Falcons, where I've got a table. I think that was my last night out. I think it was March the 13th, and I just remember the room I was in. There was so many corporate pals and clients and friends, and you could tell the mood in the room was a state of, you know, trepidation, you know. And my daughter was out in Bordeaux doing the second year of her uni degree, and my wife had been following events evolving over the previous probably 2 months really, and I was just so like head down and focused on getting my magazine out month to month. That's not to say I wasn't aware of what was going on, because I was, of course, but it was almost like, well, surely this won't, you know, the worst won't happen. And then when we went into lockdown, that Monday, we were due to go to press that Friday, March the 27th, for the April magazine. And by then, really, other than getting the final bits of copy in and proofs approved, the job, you know, the nitty gritty of the job, i.e. getting your revenues in, really should be sorted. And the start of that week, I had I wouldn't say a raft of cancellations, but I had a few things get pulled. And that was obviously hugely concerning. And some of the people that did were like myself, you know, and like Simon, you know, in independent companies who'd started from nothing, and you couldn't do anything but sympathise. No point in digging your heels in, and you started just sympathise and think, well, right, we'll get through this. And I took the decision, because of the uncertainty, to then, instead of trying to plough on and do a May magazine, I decided to very quickly make it an April/May magazine. Which we ended up, instead of, because we naturally couldn't distribute it in the conventional fashion, so we had to direct mail many of the copies, because obviously most places were closed. And then in those early weeks, really all I then tried to do, it was difficult even begin to comprehend starting another issue, and it almost, I'm not sure immoral's the word, but to be knocking on people's door to spend money on advertising and publicity, just found it felt very tough, because you just thought this is the last thing on people's minds, And
I think everybody felt like that, but whatever your business was.
It was really tough. So what I did was, I basically said all of my clients, just yourselves amongst them, anything I can support you with on all of my social media platforms remained open. Anything I can help you with being an online press release, a tweet out, sharing some that you've put on LinkedIn, and that's what I did. And it was difficult, because I'm used to being so busy, what you'd call operationally, doing each edition. I mean, obviously having a magazine business, is a monthly magazine. It's like playing in 12 cup finals. That's how I was equated to. And that's how it felt. And that was in the very early stages. Once I got the April magazine finished, I've got to say, mentally it was very tough, because it didn't feel right to start my next one. But at the same time, I didn't want to sit around all day, because the only time I ever do that is and even then I don't really sit around, if I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
But so I kind of just adapted into some kind of quasi holiday stroke work routine, where I was still up and about early, just doing what I could to support people. But it was very hard. But as I said at the outset, it seems a lifetime.
It does. It seems a lifetime. So coming out of lockdown now, then, just quickly from both of you gents, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge transitioning back into what you normally do from that situation that you just described as your holiday mode?
From a business point of view, or from a personal?
From either. What from just your biggest. We'll keep it business first.
Okay, I think from a business point of view, and if you watch the news and listen to the news, I think the biggest fear that any business has at the minute, and especially retail, is going to be consumer confidence, and also what level of sales businesses are going to see. I think that's why some businesses have made the decision not to open yet, because to still utilise the government furlough scheme, which without that, I think a lot of us certainly wouldn't be in this position today where we've managed to reopen. It's a real unknown, in terms of trying to forecast sales, cash flow, anything like that. It's really keep an eye on day to day, but just pretty much echoing what Michael said there before about social media. It's really it was so important not to stop, and it's important now to say, listen, we're still here,
still around.
We're not a salesy company. We want to help people and look good and feel great, and when people are ready to come back, that's fine. In the meantime, we just keep on engaging with our followers. So the biggest challenge that we've got business wise is seeing any kind of level of sales, because obviously a lot of weddings have been postponed, cancelled, reduced numbers to around about 30 at the minute. There's going to be no race day race days this year. There's going to be,
which is one of our biggest.
Exactly. We were going into peak season.
Yeah.
March to sort of June, July is our big season, our peak season.
Yeah.
So that's just gone now. So it's really keeping everything tight. So it's a day-to-day management on things. So that's where we are business challenge-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what happened with myself was after there was initial, first few weeks and adapting to that, deciding I was going to make the April Market double issue. Mm-hmm. I did notice a bit of a seed change in some of the people that I work with. I think obviously a lot of people, we were all in, I think, as I say, a state of shock. But then I think what I found was that slowly but surely some really positive news stories started to drip through. Yeah. And I thought, well, it's like anything, I thought, well, if I then don't do a June magazine, people are going to forget about us. And that's not what I'm about. We're a local magazine trying to portray the best of Northeast business and success stories around the region. Mm-hmm. So what I found was when I got underway with the June magazine, there was an enormous amount of goodwill out there, I think, for the publication, which I think we'd built up. And I think there was also some people had some great stories. Yeah. And so I thought, right, well, how will I do this? And I came back with the magazine that we've got in front of us now, which is obviously a June-July issue. Mm-hmm. And beyond my wildest dreams, I couldn't believe if you'd said to me early May how well that actually went. It was phenomenal, the response we got. Going forward, I mean, that was very heartening, but again, it was quite difficult because obviously Simon mentioned there about you've lost all the race day stuff that you would get. Obviously, on my side, we couldn't look at any. We lost all of our leisure business. All of our education business, and those are two big sectors in the magazine. But we managed to get a great product out, and I think now going forward, from August, my plan is to return back to monthly. I'm well down the line now with the August magazine, which is going very well. And then obviously what I hope happens for me as a publisher is that as things hopefully stabilise, that there will be companies out there who want to shout about, look, we're still here. This is where we're at. This is what we're planning to do going forward.
So it's great for you and the magazine, really, isn't it? Coming out of that for
hopefully,
give them the platform to do.
And obviously we're all in this together, and we've got to just try where we can is to all help each other out. I think So I'm reasonably confident about the future, but we're dealing with something none of us have dealt with before.
Exactly.
So
it's a total unknown for everybody, isn't it? So it's good to hear that people almost needed the magazine issue afterwards because of the good stories that had been there, to coming out of quite a weird situation and.
I mean, we were inundated. I mean, once I put it out on our social media channels, please send me a good news story, anything. And we had some fantastic stuff. You know the guy who I think lived near here, the postman who dressed up.
John.
Did you give him a suit, Simon?
We did.
That was brilliant.
That Peaky Blinders look, and he came in. Obviously social distance and all the PPE and everything else. And he looked fantastic. It was probably the hottest day of the year in a tweed suit,
three-piece, and a flat cap.
And he looked absolutely fantastic. And he's been on the radio and the news around the world.
Great,
so little old East Bolton there, our local postman. So some great news stories.
Some lovely stuff coming out of it. So what would be one learn that you think you would take from the whole situation? One learn.
I just for me, you can't take anything for granted. It's like. The one thing for me is and I mentioned it before, and I'll keep saying this about my team, is I think coming out of this more and more, I wanted to come back and I wanted to look after the team even more. There was a little bit of a restructure that went on during lockdown, and it just freed up my wife and business partners Eve's time to really focus on culture. And it's something that when you go from a startup business of 2-3 people, where you're all in one room together, and the culture's there, and you get to a Friday after the shop, and you shut the shop, and you have a few drinks and stuff like that, to all of a sudden you've got 30 in no time at all, and then culture kind of it goes out the window to some respect, because it's like we just need to do this and we need to do it now, and it gave me a little bit of time to think, right. How can we
bring
this?
that back for a larger sort of...
And I've learned, over the years as well, I didn't particularly like being 100% office-based as well. And what I want to try and do is make sure that everybody gets the work done. And if they want to work somewhere else, or they need time, or they need whatever, and just to really look after people, I think because we've seen, unfortunately, so many people contract the virus and who are no longer here anymore, it's really made me think about my own mortality and look after the team more. That's my one take out of it.
Thanks, Sam. That's a great one. And Michael, what would you say?
I think with myself, it more than anything, it's just realising and appreciating and not taking for granted what you've got. It's.
I think that's definitely a one for everyone.
I think this is business at the end of the day, and it's we're not talking about human life here. And businesses come and go, but you've built something up from nothing. Of course, it's part of you. But it's it's realising that not taking it for granted. And ever more enjoying it, even the frustrating days.
I think that's a great point, Michael, because you know, I've certainly had spells over the last couple of years where I thought, wow, I just, you know, work silly hours and everything else, and you've got to go back and be passionate about it. And what I would suggest now is I'm more passionate than ever. Coming out of it at the most challenging time, I love it more. You know, and I think you've got to embrace what you've worked, you know, your backside off for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, in the early stages of it, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I had a couple of really, really down days.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I think
you know,
everybody.
and desperately worried about the future. And you know, my wife, who was involved, you know, like Simon's wife was involved with the business. My wife does all of me bookkeeping, etc. And she says, well, Michael, you know, this isn't about you or your ability to run a business. You're dealing with like what, you know, a pandemic. You know, some none of us have ever lived through. And it took me quite a while to get my head around, getting in perspective. You know, that this was out of my hands, and I just had to roll with the punches. You know.
So over lockdown, did we take up any new hobbies? Anyone? Did we do anything new? Did we?
Well, it was. I attempted to. I thought I'd try to learn to play the guitar,
Right.
Because I'm, you know, I'm a huge music fan, but nothing had changed from the last time I picked up a guitar about 35 years ago. I've got no natural musical ability at all.
Sounds like me.
So actually, what I ended up, because my son's a really good guitar player, but so what I ended up doing was really more revisiting old hobbies. I mean, one of the things I've said, particularly in the last 5 years, is unless I go on holiday, I can never get through a book, and it's all nonsense, really. So what I started doing was getting up slightly late, although I was still awake early, and reading for an hour every morning, which was unheard of. Anyway, what's ended up happening is I've read the entire Irvine Welsh back catalogue of the ones that I hadn't read.
Great books.
Some achievement, actually.
Yeah.
So and then when that's great. So now I've read something like 13, 14 books in lockdown, which is probably more than I've read the last 2 years.
That's absolutely fantastic.
So I'm chuffed with that. And then once the golf courses reopened, I've played a number of rounds of bad golf. It's a tiny bit of improvement, and I've loved that as well. So
I mean, my answer to that question, actually, it's funny you say that. I had never played golf before.
Yeah.
And over lockdown, because all of myself and all my friends, we couldn't get together, the lads would get on Xbox and play the golf game, PGA Tour game.
Great.
And from then, once things started to open back up again, the guys were saying, do you fancy going to the driving range? So it went from never playing golf before lockdown. Now we have a trip booked in November to go somewhere up near Alnwick to play golf. So within that time, we'll see how the golf game comes
it's been
on.
fantastic. Yeah, and my son has also taken the game back up. Who hadn't played about 10 years, which is great.
So we might see you on the course.
You might try.
I think
I'll be the one in the bushes.
I think for me is I was, because I train a couple of times a week with a personal trainer. It's CrossFit training. Obviously, I couldn't do that. I was in here. They were doing like the video Zoom kind of classes, and I couldn't really get into them. I walked a little bit, but then I thought, right, I'm going to get back on my bike again. I love cycling. My knees are shot to bits. They're a bit better with weight training over the last couple of years and everything. And managed to get out on my old mountain bike. And I can go out and do 20 miles, no bother. But then I thought, right, I'm going to get it to 30 and then get to 40. And then I went out one day and I just did 50 mile and I loved it. The problem is I still do look at my phone, so where it should take me half the time, I stop off and I take photographs and everything else. So, but really looking forward. I ordered a new bike as well, which I'm still waiting for, because I went for a lovely gunmetal grey colour, typical
Lovely.
me, just couldn't go for a off the shelf whatever. And I'm really looking forward to that. I just flashed up on my Facebook memories that I was in Mallorca 3 years ago cycling with my friend who used to work for us, and he's got his own cycling business now. So I'm looking forward to getting out on the bike with him. He goes out and does 100 miles, and I set myself a challenge actually, and I'll say this on air, and so this is recorded forever. But I did say that when we opened 2 more shops, what I would do is I would go and cycle around every one of them. So I'd start off in, say, East Bolton, and then visit everyone on the bike. So there you go. So that's the plan. I want to do a little bit more of a challenge on that.
So a couple of fitness things there. The positives again coming out of a negative by then and getting on the golf course. I didn't know golf would be such a physically demanding thing.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I remember going for a well-man test, when turning 40, clearly a few years ago now. And the nurse said to me, what do you do? Like exercise? I said, and I went to the gym and I said, I play football. I still played football. And I said, I played a bit of golf. And she said, oh, you cannot include golf. And golf, believe you me,
well,
you're burning about 1,500 calories. It's fantastic.
The first day I went to the driving range, the next day when I woke up, I had no idea. And I remember trying to get out of bed and thinking, oh, God. I felt like I'd done 10 rounds with Tyson. My body was there.
Well, I had a couple of... I did try golf. I thought it was one thing that once I stopped playing football, but that was like, I'm 47 now. I stopped playing when I was 39. So a few years ago, and I said, right, I'll take up golf for some bizarre reason. I had a couple of lessons anyway, and couldn't hit the ball, so that was me done. So I'm back to cycling. That's
back
it.
to cycling.
If first 10
years are the worst cycling.
Right, I just wanted to touch on a couple of business-related questions. I think a lot of people who have the dream of starting their own business, they want to kind of know from the insiders, from you guys who've actually done that, and what kind of advice you can give them when starting out. So one of the first questions I wanted to ask is in regards to the more business side of things is, what do you wish you would have known then before you started out, or what advice would you give to yourself starting out, based on your current experiences of your business?
I think I'll definitely start there. Again, it's kind of it's going back to the financials. It's I'll never forget, after a couple of years speaking to our bank manager, who's a friend as well, and he always talked about management information from the early days. And I think when you're a startup and you're doing quite well, you're seeing sales come in, you haven't got many overheads, you've got low rent, you haven't got a warehouse, you haven't got a big marketing budget and everything else, and your bank balance is like nothing you've seen in your life in the first sort of 6 months. And then once you start bringing in your overheads and stuff like that, is beforehand, get some advice on your numbers, get a great accountant, who specialises in startup businesses, who can talk about cash flow, who can talk about purchases as well, but really know your numbers. I think a lot of businesses can get carried away with the operational, the sexy stuff, the market and the product that goes with it. And when you have got money in the bank to start with, it's fantastic. And I talked earlier about that 25 grand loan, which we got over 5 years and we paid off in 6 months, which we thought was great, which it was. But really know your numbers. It is look at your profit and loss as well. Understand, the VAT threshold. And I know that's quite boring, but it's essential for building a really successful business and being able to plan as well as the business grows. If you are going to reinvest in anything, is certainly know your numbers.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Simon. Michael?
Well, I think for myself, being in the publicity world, I've always loved a good quote. So, I mean, the obvious one is, forgive me for this one, is the turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. Because there's no question about that. There's times you think you're flying, but your bank position, may say otherwise. So it's imperative. It's one thing doing a transaction, but you must make sure that you're paid for in a timely fashion. So I agree with Simon entirely. Know your numbers, know exactly where you are in terms of the position of the business, what your forecasts are looking like, your debtors position, etc. There is another probably more simplistic quote, but it's the one that I do love, and it's the old Churchill one, which I think from memory is failure isn't fatal. It's the courage to carry on that counts, because what can happen, I think, when you're running a business. But it can happen if you're just working with somebody as well. You can have what you think is the end of the world. Something, you've had a bad day. You've made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but that's why we're human beings. Yeah. And I think it's something that you develop as you get over. I certainly have. It's more of a skill to think, well, tomorrow's another day. Pick myself up.
Absolutely.
Really put things in true perspective. I know I used to, many evenings I've lost in my life where you've just sat and you're just not at home.
Yeah.
If you're sat in a world of your own, and you're turning things over and over and over in your head, and and I think that's just something that you learn with experience. So I think that's very important as well. Just put things in perspective. And I think more, when I sat here at the very start of this and I said, 30 years now I've been in the publishing world. Enjoy the journey. It's it's because I can't believe I'm even saying that. It's gone by so fast. So
I think one of the other things as well, and especially now more so, but also speak to people as well. Whether it's anybody in your team, whether it's suppliers or anything like that. I think there's nothing worse than going into hiding, especially coming out of a time like this. It's best to speak to people. I've learned that from a personal point of view as well. I used to be the worst offender at, bottling things up and making things out that are not really there. Yeah. Everything can be overcome.
Making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah, and you're doing that, and the mind, is a great thing sometimes, but it's an awful thing.
Yeah.
Because you can be thinking things that actually, that they're not that bad, and most things can be dealt with. So really leaning on people around you, but speaking to people as well. Don't go quiet. There's nothing worse, and that's me speaking personally about me, not anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're running a business, the old expression "lonely at the top," and it can be, but so we all need, obviously your wife first and foremost, and then other family or members, Simon says, members of your team, or a mentor, or just somebody you can pick the phone up and. And I think that does you the power.
Utilize your support system.
But because it's very easy. It's very easy to just internalize things, and as we all know,
we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to talk. It's good to talk.
It is. It certainly is, and that's why we're here. Blokes being blokes, just cracking on. But one of the things I wanted to ask, obviously, the success story of both of you, and you both have made passions into jobs, but. Is there anything else that you in the past you would have loved to have done? So if you, for example, if you weren't the managing director of Northern Insight magazine, could you see yourself somewhere else doing something completely different?
Well, I do feel really blessed that I've as I said earlier, fell backwards into this game when I left school, and I've enjoyed it. I've had my ups and downs, but being able to get up in the morning and do a job that you like, I feel very grateful for. Yeah. So other than the outlandish things like being, one of my main passions is music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd struggle to play the triangle. But so as a musician, I'm a good publisher. But I think I would have loved to have been a musician or a cricket broadcaster, something like that.
What genre of music, if you had all the talents in the world and you were?
Well, a singer-songwriter, I think, but I mean, my taste in music's so eclectic, but I think a singer-songwriter, that would be marvellous,
Simon?
Oh, this is easy for me. This is like, I think anybody who follows me on social media knows there's a couple of things that stand out. My passion for coffee is through the roof. I could drink double espresso, quadruple espresso all day long and still sleep 8 hours. I would have loved to open a coffee shop, and because I'm as passionate about coffee and cake as I am about clothes. So I think at some stage with Master Debonair, you will see something crop in.
Coffee related
or non-alcoholic beer related, but coffee for me, I could have. That whole thing of working in a shop, I was delighted when we opened the shop because I was like, this is great. I can be the shopkeeper and stuff like that. And I loved it. So I would absolutely love to run a small independent coffee shop. Like the whole, so some of the things that where Master Debonair were welcome to our home kind of thing comes in is because I watched Cheers when I was younger, the American program. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
You might be too young, Joe.
Great.
And I've watched all the reruns, and it was like everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
And I've kind of that's the kind of thing that I there's certain things in business that I want people to come into our shop, or you know, when I go to the pub, everyone knows your name,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a coffee shop for me.
Master Cavitier. There you go.
Yeah, there are.
I just want to interject with a special little shout out to Tynemouth Coffee, because we have a machine in the kitchen here. Coming back from lockdown, and you know, you're feeding the Tynemouth Coffee beans, and it does all the business and comes out with.
It just also as well, do you know, like one of the reasons Michael's here as well, and throughout the series that you'll see with the podcast is we want to bring into the podcast people we love, people in business and brands that we love as well. That, you know, in Tynemouth Coffee, they sent a delivery over to me during lockdown, and I brought the coffee machine over, and it is just, and I'm not just saying this, and I'm not being paid for it. It is the best coffee ever.
It's exquisite. It really is.
So try it, guys.
It is. Thanks. That's some really interesting ideas. I think the museum would have probably been me as well, but I'm the same as you, Michael. I don't really have the dexterity in my fingers to play guitar or piano and things like that. But in another life, I would have liked to have been some kind of rock star or something.
That would have
like
been my second if I could sing.
Get myself on tour or something like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic question. Fantastic answers, gents. Thanks very much. So, before we start the podcast, I put out to our followers just any questions that they would like to ask either Simon or Michael or collectively the group. So I'm just going to run through a couple of the questions that we've received, and some great questions here. So thanks to everyone who did send questions in to us. The first question that came through, we'll pose it to Simon, but I'm sure we can all answer it in one way or another. How important are clothes for your mood and mentality for the day ahead?
Oh, massive. Do you know, they can change my mood. You know, most mornings I would suggest I wake up with a buzz, but you know, as I get a little bit older as well. But do you know what? Like, I can remember meeting a northeast business person, very successful, and myself and Eve got some advice with him, and he talked about his suit being his armour, and it can change, and there's not very many mornings, I keep saying this, where like I joke about getting dressed in the dark, where I literally think, right, okay, I'm going to wear that today and I'll put it on. So there's not many times where like I'll really pull all the clothes out, and it can change you. You know, I knew this morning I was going to wear a suit, but this afternoon I've been shooting some different looks, you know, and I felt a little bit grungy this afternoon. So I wanted to get the jeans and the boots on and everything to go with it. But it can absolutely change your mood, because you can put something on and it feels right and it fits right. You can feel so confident. I literally, like, it's my chest out, and it
Confidence levels through the roof.
Yeah,
really,
it's like a persona.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this persona of putting an outfit on, and all of a sudden it can change the way you speak and the way you talk as well. So absolutely everything, the confidence when you get that outfit right.
Michael, sitting in a suit, would you?
Well, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's nothing. I mean, one of the things that I've actually missed during lockdown is putting a suit on and going to see clients.
Yeah.
There's nothing better. You know,
Yeah.
as Simon says, you know, and I almost feel that is me stepping into my professional world and who I am. I mean, and even working at home during this period, you know, I have what I call my Northern Insight uniform, which is me branded sweatshirts and polo shirts, and it is actually I have right through when I've worked, even though albeit I've just been at home with my family. And I feel so much better for it, you know.
You've just reminded us of a question I did want to ask you, Michael. You know, looking on your LinkedIn and what you do and your whole job as a whole, very sort of competent networker. You said before that you just had a passion for sort of just meeting and talking to people. Within the lockdown, how have you sort of adapted your networking style? Because obviously you had to, because you couldn't see anyone. Have you been making more use of LinkedIn? Have you been doing video calls? What kind of things have you been doing?
I mean, I've used a lot more on the social media side. You know, LinkedIn in particular, I find is a really good tool. I've done quite a few Zoom meetings, which I was a little skeptical about at first, but I've quite enjoyed. I mean, before I actually did a Zoom meeting, I did a Zoom quiz with some of my pals on a Friday night, which, you know, if I told you by the time we got the last round we couldn't speak, I'll give you the idea of the sort
I
of
think
quiz
there's
it
been
was.
a lot of that going on, hasn't there? Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you've just had to adapt. And more than anything else, the old-fashioned way, picking up the telephone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one thing I would say, which is possibly a downside of technology, is I don't think people pick up the telephone enough.
Enough.
And, you know, the way I was trained back in 1990 when I started the Evening Chronicle, you
Yeah.
had to make so many calls
Yeah.
to an MD like Simon a
Yeah.
day. And it's fantastic, you know, and I fall back on that training all of the time.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot more of that, and I've enjoyed it.
Good.
You know?
It's a lot more of a personable way of starting that
Yeah.
relationship, isn't it, than an email or a
Yeah.
text or a,
Even if it's just a case of just checking in with
Yeah.
somebody, like, you know, somebody who does a lot of me photography, just, you know, who lost a lot of his work, and just checking that they're okay. And it's
Yeah.
just been, you know, it's just been nice. So I've enjoyed that.
Yeah. Simon, one of the questions that came in, I know you get asked this on a weekly, if not daily basis from our followers, but you know, with it being our first podcast, we'll get it on air. Where are you opening up your new stores?
Okay, we've got, well, before lockdown, we did have an opportunity to look at a couple of locations in Cardiff, but we thought it was important really to reevaluate that coming out of lockdown. So a couple of main areas which we are looking at, I'll talk about the existing, but I'll also talk about the new, is we've always pretty much from day one thought Essex was a fantastic place to have a store. So we're re-looking at somewhere in Essex. I don't know where. So I've picked that back up again. But also as well, we get a lot of customers coming down from Scotland. Like I mentioned before, we've always had customers coming from as far as Southampton to Aberdeen, and that's quite regular to our Bolton store. So priority at the minute is somewhere in Essex. And then also I would suggest it's going to be somewhere in Glasgow. Time frames, it's like everything, there's a cost to it. Ideally I would like to get one of the two open by the end of this year, and then get the second one open the first quarter of 2021. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also as we speak, hot off the press, is we're relocating the Chesterfield store. We opened the Chesterfield showroom, which pretty much was a showroom, and it was tailoring and it was more appointment based. So I hopped on a train. We were talking about this just before. I was literally in the bath 15 minutes before I was on a train on Sunday, looking at a potential store location in Chesterfield, which is about a 5-minute walk up from where we currently are. It's a 3-story building. It means that we can get our casual collection in, our tailoring collection, and also our private showroom. So we've got Eve, who's down there with our joiner right now, looking at the building, ripping up laminate flooring, ripping out walls. We're looking to open that on the 29th of July, and it just means anybody in those areas of like the likes of Derby, Nottingham, Leicester, we do find our customers will travel an hour and a half, up to an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to us. It means they get the full Master Debonair East Bolton experience,
The flagship
and that
experience.
is so important,
Yeah.
because our followers see us a lot in the East Bolton store. They see all the product range in there, and I understand that that's what they expect when they come in store. So I'm gonna give it to them. So I can't wait to get moved into there. But do you know, if we had an endless supply of money, I would literally roll out 10 stores in a year, and I would make sure that everybody within a 1 hour distance could drive to our stores.
You never know, Simon.
Yeah,
Go on,
yeah.
mate.
I mean,
On
that's
my
the
way.
plan. My passion has always been the stores online. Yeah, it's fantastic, but I think there's nothing better than that bricks and mortar experience. And I love seeing our customers, and I love getting feedback, and I try and react as much as possible. So there you go. I'm keeping it tight at the minute. I don't want to get too carried away and going to say we're on 6
Close to your
stores.
chest.
But yeah, that's where we're looking currently.
So exciting things coming up in the near future, hopefully for Master Debonair. One of the questions that come in, I thought was quite interesting, and it's more in relation to the northeast, as it's where all the guests here are based. But what are your thoughts on Newcastle opening up pubs and restaurants in the next week or so?
Well, obviously, I've got a lot of long-standing friends and clients in the leisure sector, so I've really felt for them these last 3.5 months. So, and as an out-and-out pub man, I'm absolutely delighted. But obviously, we have to have embrace it with a note of caution. It has to be done in a safe manner. Obviously, none of us want a second spike. I wish them nothing but success, and I just hope. I mean, I am I don't know. Probably by the time this is broadcast, will have passed that. But I think opening on a Saturday is, I know there's a lot of licensees out there would have rather been a Monday.
Yeah.
So it had a bit like a soft opening.
I think a lot of local businesses are choosing to do that anyways, regardless.
Yeah. So I hope it goes off without too much incident. And I wish them nothing but the utmost success, because the leisure sector in the northeast is fantastic. We have some amazing venues, amazing hotels, as good as anywhere, and it's great to see them reopening.
And it's also going to drive the rest of the economy as
of course.
well. There's a feel-good factor about it. I speak from from our side, a selfish point of view, where if people are going back to pubs and restaurants and everything else,
they're going shopping.
You're going to want a new outfit as well. And I just feel as though it will get the rest of the country moving in the economy. But like Michael's just said, and it's no different to when we reopened our shops. Is health and safety is absolutely paramount.
Like you mentioned before, having a lot of friends in that industry.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot because of the friends that you have in the industry, but what have you most missed in regards to food, pubs? Where's your favourite haunts that you can't wait to get back to?
Well, I mean, there's a number really, but I mean, I love places like Satchin's on the quayside.
Lovely.
I love Sabatini's on the quayside. I first did business with in the advertising world in 1991, I think.
Yeah, I was born.
I think they were called something else then, but they've been Sabatini's for 25 years. Bar Lugar on Grey Street, I think, is a fantastic meeting place. At any time of the day. Somewhere like Willie's Cafe in Jesmond, I don't know how it familiar. I mean, that is a real fulcrum of the chopper ones. That Rod he's a good friend of mine, and that is just a great place to meet and do business and just see people that It's just a great place to take your family. Yeah, it is. And I've really missed that. I mean, the nature of my job, I'm out and about ordinarily, doing a lot of meetings, and you meet a lot of people in cafes or in hotels. And I've always had an affinity for that sector, and I've always loved working with it. So it'd be good to see them back. So
that's great. So last couple of questions really, and then we'll wrap this up. It's been a fantastic chat to have with both of you gents, but I just wanted to ask for the people who don't know about Northern Insight magazine and want to know where to find you. Where would be the best place to start in regards to subscribing or finding out a little bit more about?
Well, ordinarily you can pick the magazine up at all leading business, hotel and leisure outlets right through the region. Obviously the last 2 editions, that's been slightly tweaked because I've had to direct mail a lot of them. But by the time the August magazine comes out, offices are reopening, and obviously bars and restaurants are reopening, so in hotels. So you should be able to get it at all of the normal outlets. Failing that, you can go online and subscribe via our website, northern-insight.co.uk.
That's fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Michael.
No problem.
And just one last question, just to round it off. I think this was a really, really nice question to finish on. That's why I've left this one to last. A lot of people who will be listening to this may not be from the Northeast, but because everyone in this room here is based in the Northeast, what type of things would you love to see for the future of the Northeast?
Do you know, I think I do love the leisure industry, even though I don't drink anymore. But I think one thing that we're really missing in the Northeast, and it is going ahead, is moving the big music venue in the Northeast as well. I love, like Michael, I love music, a lot of loud music. over the years that I've been to see, and the likes of Leeds and Manchester as
Yeah.
well. So you know, the Sage is a wonderful building, but something on that Gateshead side as well. So that's I think the wheels are in motion for that. The one thing, going back to a passion of mine, that I'll tell you a little story, and obviously I wasn't an entrepreneur back then and thinking about these kind of things, but when I was at university, I went to university in Northumbria in Newcastle and did engineering. It's a long story for another podcast. And my friend and I, Graham from Grimsby, we were asked in Newcastle many years ago, 22 years ago, what we would like to see more in Newcastle at the time, so it's relevant. And we were like, bars and coffee shops where you could sit outside. And if I only knew back then to think, right, there isn't any of these, maybe we could do that. So I think the Northeast, there's quite a few of these places already. But for me, that fantastic music, you know, hub, that's what I'd really love to see.
Yeah. Can't wait to get back to live music.
Yeah.
Well, I think I would very much echo that.
Yeah.
I mean, as Simon has just said there, we're in danger of being left behind. But Leeds is a fabulous venue, and sadly, in recent years, as many of the headline acts have bypassed us to go to Leeds or up to Glasgow.
Yeah.
So I think that's an obvious one. I think a lot of the hoteliers would say we need a really world-class conference venue as well.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of talk about that with the Gateshead Quays redevelopment also. So I think that would be fantastic. I think if rather than singling one thing out, all I want to see us as a region is just prosperity, and for us to recover from this, minimise the job losses, and for companies to be able to consolidate and then look at growth as we go forward. That's more than anything else. Yeah, that's what I'd like.
Michael, thank you very much for being here. I think it's been a massive success.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Many thanks.
Podcast. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions. It's been a pleasure to meet Michael. I'm sure Simon will agree.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to our debut podcast sponsored by Master Debonair. Don't forget to follow our channel, give us feedback, help us improve on our future episodes. If you would like to join us on the podcast, just drop us a message to any one of the MD social pages. As I said before, you can catch us at Master Debonair on most social platforms. And tune in every month where we'll just be chatting to interesting folk from around the Northeast and further afield about anything and everything. So thanks again, gents. It's been perfect. And see you next time.
Bye now.